All right, guys, welcome to VCE Business Management, Units 1 and 2, or Year 11. Could be Year 10, obviously, if you're an accelerant. So this is the video covering the first key knowledge dot point in the first outcome of the first unit. So the first video of many for this year. So the idea of these videos is to take you through all of the key knowledge that you need to know throughout the entire course. So what we always do with these videos is start with a snapshot of the study design. So this is just a screenshot basically of the first outcome. And you can see it gives you a little paragraph about what you cover in that particular outcome. And then it gives you the key knowledge that you're expected to know by the end of it. And that is exactly that key knowledge is what these videos cover. And you'll soon get the idea of how this works. We start at the top and we just basically watch a video covering each of those key knowledge dot points that you see there. Now, when you look at a study design, there is two aspects to it for every outcome. There's some key knowledge and some key skills. The idea of these videos is to give you the knowledge that you need, and then the skills come from the activities and the work that we do in class. So across the two, from watching the videos and making some really good study notes from them, and then the activities in class, we cover off on the key knowledge and the key skills. So that's the study design, and this is what this particular video is going to be covering, the concept of entrepreneurship. So let's get straight into it. So what is this all about, the concept of entrepreneurship? Okay, what is entrepreneurship? Entrepreneurship, I'm pretty sure is a word you've heard, but do you understand fully, and could you define what that actually means if asked to? So there's a definition for you, okay? The process of starting a business to satisfy a consumer need, taking on the associated risks, but also taking on the associated rewards. Okay, so there's a couple of key parts to that, okay? Taking on the associated risks, and then you're the person that kind of reaps the rewards if they come from taking on those risks. That's the key aspect to this. I think when people think of an entrepreneur, they just think of these very rich business people, which can be the case, but what's behind that is that they have generally taken on some kind of risk in the past and maybe continue to do so, but they then are the ones that take on the reward that was associated from basically taking that risk in the first place. So lots of people have business ideas, okay, but not all of them have the desire, the ability, and I've put the guts. Okay, it takes some guts to do this, to take on the risks of transforming those ideas into an actual business. Okay, lots of people have ideas, but I guess where we're going with this video is, what is it that sets these entrepreneurs apart, these successful business people? What sets them apart from the rest of us who maybe have the ideas, but then don't have the desire and the ability to kind of take that further and actually turn that into a reality? Okay, so I'm going to give you some examples here of me. Okay, so prior to teaching, I had a fairly extensive business career covering lots of things. I started out life as an accountant, then I ended up working for McDonald's and kind of went through the ranks. I joined as a graduate, went through the ranks, and ended up running a store. And then I became a regional manager and ran 7 stores. This is back in England, back in Manchester in the mid-90s. Then I moved into nightclubs and bars, and I ended up running a couple of pretty successful venues. And then I became operations director of that business, where I was running 12 nightclubs and bars around the UK. I moved from that into recruitment and headhunting, where I spent 10 years. And it was after that that I got into teaching. So what I'm pointing out here is, this is kind of a bit of a random example, but when I was a kid, there's a picture of me in primary school. Not quite sure how old I was. Now, from a very young age, for my dessert, my favorite thing to do was take a bowl of vanilla ice cream and chop up Penguins or Kit Kats. Now, Kit Kats you'll be aware of. Penguin is kind of like the English Tim Tam. There's a big running argument amongst Poms and Aussies about which is better, the Tim Tam or the Penguin. I have to admit, I was always a Penguin fan, but after a number of years being in Australia, I'm probably more of a Tim Tam fan now. But same idea. And what I used to do is chop the biscuits up and kind of mix them through the ice cream. And people saw me doing this and thought, it was a bit weird and didn't really get why I was doing it. It was just my favorite thing to do. I loved it. And I did that through my whole childhood, even through adulthood. Okay. Then I moved to Australia in 2005 and I came across this business, Cold Rock, which at that time was everywhere. I think there's a few less of them now, but certainly in other states, certainly up in Queensland, they're more common these days, which kind of makes sense, I guess, with the weather. But yeah, Cold Rock, which basically built a business on exactly what I had been doing myself kind of my whole life. And I was kind of like blown away, like, wow, there's a business absolutely based on what I've been doing. I never thought to turn that into a business. Never kind of occurred to me, but there you go. The next one, I mentioned for a number of years I ran bars and nightclubs, and I was a general manager basically, always for medium to large businesses that owned the venues, and I was just basically installed as the general manager. And then later on, as I said, I was the operations director, kind of responsible for the operation of all of the bars and clubs in the portfolio of the business. Now, over my time in that industry, I built up a lot of knowledge and a lot of skills in how to run these venues. And I also often, talked to friends who were interested as well about maybe, going out on my own and buying a bar or starting a bar and kind of running my own thing. Like as a general manager or even as an operations director, you can earn okay money, but the money's never great. You're certainly never going to get rich running the business for somebody else. The only way to, make a lot of money is to actually own the place. And then the profits are coming to you. And over, a number of years, I often talked with friends about doing this, but, I just never had the guts, never had I never wanted to take the risk of putting everything I had into the business. For me, it was like a safer option to be running these venues for somebody else. And while I was going to earn less money, at least it was kind of safer. Okay, so there's kind of another aspect to entrepreneurship. It's the safe option to not do that. And there's a venue that I ran that was the most successful one in Birmingham in the late 90s. Huge nightclub in Birmingham, attracting people from all over the UK, 2,000 capacity. And it was really after running that that I, was particularly talking with friends about doing something myself. But yeah, I never had that, drive to do it and the willingness to take the risk to put my own money at risk, basically. Now, 2005, I moved to Australia and I came across Boost. Okay. Now, this is a business that was interesting to me because, where I'd come from the UK, this did not exist. This idea of a juice bar, smoothie bar, whatever you want to call it. And again, I was like, wow, this is interesting. Why does this not exist in England? And again, I talked to some friends back home and told them about this. And we actually started, talking fairly seriously about maybe setting something up like this back in England. But again, we never really kind of pushed through, never really, we had the ideas. And having worked in hospitality, McDonald's and nightclubs, I certainly had the skills to be able to do this. But again, it came down to, none of us really, really kind of wanted to risk our jobs and the security that we had in our jobs to actually make this happen. Then the next time I went back to the UK after a couple of years of living in Australia, and suddenly there were juice bars all over the place. Okay. Now, I guess one of the reasons you might say, well, why does Boost or juice bars, smoothie bars work in the UK? In Australia, not in the UK. I guess weather, you might say. Obviously, the UK is much colder, but what a lot of these places tend to do is during the summer they run like a smoothie and juice operation, and then in the cooler months, which is most of the year, they actually turn into a soup operation. So they kind of have two sides to the business. And these things now, you go back to London and they are all over the place. So obviously other people have had that idea and they've put them into reality. Okay, yeah, literally all over London now. Then for my 10 years prior to teaching, I worked for a number of recruitment companies. Those are a few of them. And again, I became a fairly skilled recruiter and headhunter, and then I managed teams within these businesses. So I really understood recruitment. Now, recruitment is actually a relatively easy to enter business. You don't need huge resources, doesn't need huge expense. And again, a lot of people that are working in recruitment, when you're working for another business, again, you can earn some good money, but you're never going to get rich. So at various times during my recruitment career, friends that I work with ended up going out on their own and starting a recruitment business. And these are 4 of them that were started by friends of mine, some of them back in the UK, some of them here in Australia. And the people that started those businesses did pretty well, and a couple of them actually became extremely wealthy. So some Australian entrepreneurs. Okay, so Janine Alice from Boost Juice. Some of you may be familiar with her story. I think that the story behind Boost Juice, she went to California. I think it was like the mid to late 90s. She went to California on a holiday. This was before anything like this existed in the UK, but she noticed that there were juice and smoothie bars all over California. California has a fairly similar type of climate to Australia. Generally, it's warm. So she came back and thought, wow, that's something that really worked there. Maybe I could set something similar up here. She opened her first juice bar. It was some point in the 90s. That took off really quickly, did really well, and she expanded fairly quickly. And, 20 years later, she's expanded into a number of other countries as well. She's also expanded her business interest, but she's worth several $100 million, I believe, these days. Kogan, you'll be familiar with the Kogan online shopping site that this guy started, I think, when he was about 16, just selling stuff out of his parents' garage in, I think it was the eastern suburbs of Melbourne. And it just started from there. It became very successful, and he expanded, and then he obviously needed to get premises and so on and so forth. And now this is a huge business. And again, he is exceptionally wealthy. Nick Molnar, one of the couple of the guys behind Afterpay. Again, this is a much more recent development. This grew very, very quickly. He saw a gap in the market, an opportunity, something that didn't exist in the market already. This idea of getting something and paying for it in installments shortly after. And again, this business took off really, really quickly. He became very wealthy very quickly, along with the other people that were involved in the startup of that business. And there you go. Canva, Melanie Perkins. I'm assuming you guys are probably familiar with Canva. You probably have used it for school projects. Again, a gap in the market. She took something, had an idea, turned it into a reality. Atlassian, a software company. Mike Cannon-Brooks, and there's another guy, his name escapes me at the moment, but these 2 guys, I think, generally top the rich list in Australia, have done for a number of years now. And again, had an idea, went for it, turned it into reality, and became very, very successful and very, very wealthy at the same time. So what do these people have in common? Is there like a list of characteristics, traits, skills, that kind of thing that these successful entrepreneurs tend to have in common? Okay, now, not all of the entrepreneurs that you come across necessarily have all of the skills necessary for success in business, but you do find that there are some kind of common traits amongst them. So you're going to find that most of these entrepreneurs have skills in the common skills in the following areas. Okay, so first off, we come back to this idea of risk. These are people that are prepared to take a risk. They're prepared to take a risk with their money, with their time, potentially an already successful career, and ultimately risking failure. That's what it boils down to. If these businesses don't work out, you fail. So they're willing to take that risk to pursue their dream of running their own business. Taking calculated risks is all part of the process of entrepreneurship. Innovation is a second common characteristic which you find amongst these entrepreneurs. This ability to come up with new ideas, maybe new ways of doing things, new approaches. And again, it's this innovation which is often what sets these businesses apart from all the other competition that is out there. Decision making, these people tend to be very, very strong, very, very good decision makers. So the decision making, or a definition of that, basically the ability to choose the best course of action from a range of alternatives that are available to you. This is obviously critical when you're starting a new business because there's lots and lots of decisions to be made. And actually that's what we move through. A lot of the rest of The first outcome that we're going to be looking at in the next few weeks is all around the decisions that need to be made when you are establishing your business. So we kind of get into more of that. Communication is another skill that these people tend to have. Okay, the ability to clearly and coherently transfer information to others. And also key to communication is listening to feedback. So communication is a two-way process. It's not just about telling people what you want them to know. It's about listening to the feedback and taking that on board. This is really important when you're starting a business because there's always going to be lots and lots of different parties involved in the process. You're starting the business, you're going to be liaising and dealing with lots and lots of different people. So a really good ability to communicate with all those different types of people is going to be key to your success. So look, summing this up, okay, starting up a new business is a very risky thing to do. And we touch on that a bit later in the outcome as well. The reality is that more new businesses fail than succeed. There's no guarantee of success when you're starting a new business, okay? So if you're thinking about going down this route, you need to ask yourself a few questions. Am I willing to take the risk? And like we've touched on before, that could be financially. It could be, very often it's actually with a career. You know, a lot of people are in a solid, stable career they are doing very well in and earning a decent income. Are you willing to risk that career, to leave that job and start out on your own? Do you have the skills to make that work? So we just touched on some of the skills that entrepreneurs have. So if you sort of really self-analyze and think that you're lacking in some of those areas, then that might kind of head you in the direction that this is perhaps not the way to go for me. And am I willing to put in the hard work and the long hours? And that is a reality of almost every new business. Okay, you might be giving up a job where you're working 9 to 5, maybe doing a few hours outside of that. But most people start a new business, they work really, really hard and really, really long hours, particularly in the early days of the business while you're establishing it, getting it up and running. Are you willing to do that? Okay. And again, that might be something that, put me off maybe doing this over the years, why I kind of ignored some of those ideas that I had and, did not turn them into reality. Probably I wasn't necessarily willing to do that maybe. And that is it for the first key knowledge dot point, guys. So you should now have a pretty coherent set of notes that you will then later revise on or from for the SACs and the exam. So make sure you keep your notes really organized, color coding, however you want to do it. By now you should know how to take notes. So that's it. I will see you in the video for the next key knowledge dot point, key knowledge 2. Cheers for now.